about to say something that you're all going to respond by saying, no, duh. Ready? There's no such thing as a perfect family. No, duh. Isn't it true? There is no such thing as a perfect family. I mean, every family has problems. Some families have money problems. Some have parenting problems. Some have children problems. Some have in-law problems. Some are dealing with health issues, or maybe addiction issues, or there's work issues, or there's communication breakdowns, or spiritual struggles. Every family is dealing with something. And so if you've come this morning and you're thinking, oh no, our family is dealing with something, I say, welcome to the human race. We all are dealing with something. And one of the things that the enemy loves to do is to get us to think, you are the only family that is not getting everything all put together. I mean, just look around that church. Everybody else, they all got their stuff all together, but what's wrong with you and your family? Well, I want to introduce you today to a family that is dealing with problems. And you know, it's not that the problems are the issue. It's how you navigate the problems. They will either make you or they will break you. This family I want to introduce you to this morning, if you were looking for a family to put on the cover of Dysfunctional Family magazine, this is the absolute family that you would actually put on the cover. The father, his name was Jacob. He had a long history of being known as someone who was a liar, who was deceitful, who was a cheater, and he married not one, but two sisters. He was wanting to marry the younger one, but had to marry the older one first. And so, they all got married. So now we got this whole thing of polygamy going on. And not only did he have children with both of the sisters, but he also had children with both of their spouse or their servants. And it was the sister's idea that Jacob should have kids with the servants. This is just nasty. And you're not out of the first book of the Bible where we got a family that's having all kinds of problems. So we have, through these four women, Jacob had 12 sons. He had 6 sons with Leah. She was the older sister that he really didn't want to marry. And he had 2 other sons with her servant. It's coming to me. Zilpah, thank you very much. And then with the sister he really wanted to marry, that was Rachel, he had eventually 2 sons with Rachel, and then he also had 2 more sons with Rachel's servant, Bilhah. Now, if you'll notice something on this chart, there is one of those sons who is not like the other. This is kind of like Sesame Street, right? Please notice that one of those children, which would be one of the 2 sons of Rachel, he is one who has a coat of many colors. And the reason for that is this is a kid named Joseph. He was Jacob's favorite son. Don't you just hate that? And it always seems like it's somebody else, that they're the favorite child. I got 6 kids in my family, and I grew up as the youngest of 6, and I can tell you I'm not the favorite. All right? So I'm kind of looking at the other, and I was like, oh. But you start digging into this family's background, and it's kind of like a lumpy throw rug, because the issues are with polygamy, with deception, with favoritism. The more you pull up that rug, the more dirt that you find underneath that rug. And that's exactly what this family was having. So that gives you a little bit of a background of this family. Now, one thing I do want to say is that with Joseph, that favorite guy, he was so favored that his dad, Jacob, gave him this amazing coat. It's known as should we say just the Technicolor Dream Coat? Is that what it's called? Also the coat of many colors. There's a lot of different names for that, but if you can follow along with me in Genesis 37, we are going to talk about this dysfunctional family as we look at our second message in the Can You Dig It series. And so beginning with verse 4 of Genesis 37, this is the word of the Lord. When his brothers saw that their father loved him, Joseph, more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So I said, this is the second message of our Can You Dig It sermon series. And we're finding ourselves at the edge of a deep pit. This pit, though, it wasn't dug with a shovel. This pit was dug with something else. It was dug out of jealousy, out of hatred, out of envy that was all directed toward a 17-year-old, arrogant, snot-nosed teenager named Joseph. And oftentimes when we study this passage in the Bible, what we do is we focus on Joseph, 17-year-old kid with the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And what we're talking about is how Joseph was able to overcome all the obstacles in his path to fulfill God's plan for his life. And that is amazing, amazing message. I love to preach on that, but that's not what we're going to preach on this morning. Because instead of focusing on Joseph, I want to focus on his brothers, the ones who end up throwing this kid into a pit. While Joseph was stuck in a deep well, his brothers, they were also stuck in a deep pit. It was a deep pit of jealousy that they allowed to be dug inside of their heart. It's kind of like a boomerang. And what a boomerang does, it's a weapon. And you can take that thing and you can throw it out at somebody. And yes, as it goes out, it's going to inflict some damage on its target. But the boomerang is designed to come back toward you. And if you're not careful, what's going to happen is you're the one who's going to get injured in the process. It's exactly like the message that Kaya was just giving to us out of Galatians chapter 6. A man reaps what he sows. And that's precisely what happened with these brothers. They didn't see it coming, but boy, they sure got hurt. 10 brothers, they were stuck in a pit of jealousy. This pit started off in an understandable way. The father was showing favoritism to Joseph over all the other sons in the family. But this pit ended up getting deeper when the father came and gave him that coat of many colors. And then Joseph starts telling them about the dreams that he was having. It was dreams of being a ruler over them, of reigning over them, and the Bible says that he was filled with jealousy. Here's the thing, jealousy, along with his evil siblings of envy, of hatred, it never stays still. Jealousy keeps on digging. It's interesting in that passage I just read. What you find is how the pit of jealousy that they were stuck in just gets deeper and deeper. It says that they hated him, and then they could not speak a kind word to him. And then a little bit later, they hated him all the more. And then it says right down there, the brothers, they were just jealous of him. The brothers, they were filled with this jealousy. Started out as hatred, becomes betrayal, becomes envy, and it all is because the father was showing favoritism toward Joseph over them. Now you got to ask, because I'm the youngest in my family, is it wrong for the brothers to want affirmation, approval from their father? Okay, they said no. How about the people over on this side? Sorry, this ear's plugged up because I had a cold all week. Is it wrong for any of these brothers to want and need approval from their father? Thank you. Just want to make sure. Okay, I got that in one ear. It's kind of a mono right now. So, no, it's not wrong at all. And in fact, if you look at this family, there's a lot of blame to go around for all the problems that were happening in this family. But it's normal for a normal desire for a child to want their father's approval. But here's the thing I want you to think about. There are two types of jealousy. Did you realize that? You can be jealous for someone. You can also be jealous of someone. For instance, let's say that if you're married, but you are spending all kinds of time at work, you're spending all kinds of time with your friends, at the neglect of the relationship you have with your wife. Do you know what she is? She is jealous for you. She is longing for that attention that you are giving out to other things that are important, but not at the expense of the relationship you have with your wife. She's jealous for your attention. She's wanting to spend time with you. And a wise man will make sure that he balances that time with his wife and with his work and with his friends and other things. However, if your wife, if she is so insecure in your relationship that whenever you're at work, she's constantly checking on you, or she refuses to allow you to spend any time at all with your friends, she's not jealous for you, she's jealous of you. And if you guys are dealing with jealousy in your marriage, what I encourage you to do is to take some time, just the two of you, just to sit down together before God, and Lord, will you please help us? Will you take some time to pray that God would help us to get out of this pit? Because like I said, jealousy doesn't stay still, it keeps on digging. And if the seeds of jealousy find their way inside your heart, guess what? They're going to be able to sprout, and they're going to be able to spread, and they're going to give some very poisonous fruit in your relationship. You see, one form of jealousy is constructive. The other form of jealousy is destructive. In Shakespeare's famous play, Othello, the main character is warned about the power of jealousy. When Lagos says, "Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on." Oh, isn't that so true? You see, the deeper you dig, the darker it gets. The longer that you have that shovel of jealousy in your hands, the darker the pit is getting. You know, as you think about this jealousy, it always digs a hole. And yes, it may impact somebody else, but guess what's also impacting you? It could hurt somebody else, but it's also hurting your own soul. Well, let's keep moving on, because these brothers, they're dealing with this jealousy, and they hate him all the more. They can't say a kind word to their brother whatsoever. They're filled with jealousy. The older brothers, the 10 older brothers, they go out, and they're the sheep herders, so they're out there taking care of the sheep. And Jacob, the father, sends Joseph, the favorite son, go out and check on your brothers. So Joseph puts his fancy coat on. He starts heading out in the fields. In verse 19, the brothers, they see Joseph coming up, just strutting up the path with his fancy coat on. And here's what they say. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben, he was the oldest in the family, when Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. This trap that they already fallen into, it had started out with hatred and then became envy, and then betrayal, and now it is conspiracy to murder. You see how jealousy keeps digging deeper and deeper and deeper? I mean, notice the first thing that they did. The first thing they did when Joseph got to him, did anybody pick up on that? The first thing they did is they stripped him of that multicolored robe. And then they threw him into the pit. It's as if they're saying, this robe means absolutely nothing. We're stripping you of your favored status. You are no better than us. In fact, you're worse. And our lives would be better off if you were dead. And immediately after that, the Bible says they sat down for lunch. Can you believe it? Hey, they plotted their brother's murder, threw him into this pit, and while their brother is screaming out for mercy, they're sitting over here having a foot long from Subway. Are we kidding? I mean, you got to wonder about these guys. There's not one guilty conscience in the whole bunch. Well, it just so happened that a group of tradesmen were coming along, and so they came up with another idea. They said, hey, why should we kill him and get nothing for him? Let's sell him into slavery in Egypt. And so that's exactly what they did. They pulled their brother up out of that pit, and they sold him into slavery. And they see Joseph marching off to slavery. And what they did is they went up, they killed one of their goats. And they took that coat of many colors, and they dipped it in that goat's blood, took it back to their father Jacob at home. They said, look what we found. They allowed their father to kind of come to his own conclusions. The only conclusion he'd come to is like, well, some wild animal has attacked my son. And now Jacob is grief-stricken, and he's going to carry the grief of the death of his son Joseph. He's going to carry that all the way to his grave. They used that pit to get rid of their brother. They tried to cover that with blood. They tried to cover it with fake grief. Can you imagine what it was like for them to be at Joseph's funeral? They had to have a funeral for him, right? Memorial service anyway, a wake. Can you imagine them just standing there and acting as if they were sorry that he was gone? I mean, maybe they were sorry that their dad was grief-stricken, but the fact is they knew the truth. They knew this guy, he wasn't dead. They just sold him off into slavery. I can't think what's more diabolical, because they knew that slaves would be worked to death. Which is worse, have our brother worked to death, or let's just throw him in this cistern and let him starve to death? Which is worse? I don't know. Well, after the funeral, they probably thought, okay, problem's over, right? Oh, the fact is their problems are just beginning. Because every day they had to carry the guilt, the shame of what they did to their own brother. And every day they had to be oh so careful. We want to make sure we don't say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time, because then everybody's going to find out what's going on and what we really did. You know, there are some things that, time heals. You can kind of forget things over time. But you don't forget something like this, do you? 20 years is a long time. And for 20 years, they carried the memory of how they betrayed their brother and sold their own flesh and blood into slavery. See, in 20 years, there's a lot that you can fall in love. 20 years, you can get married. 20 years, you can start a family. 20 years, you can start a career. 20 years, you can become wealthy. So a lot of things can happen in 20 years, but you know something you cannot do in 20 years? You cannot erase a guilty conscience in 20 years. It keeps eating at you. Something we don't talk about very much is the conscience. But we really should. The conscience, it really is like a barometer inside of your heart. It helps you understand what's right and what's wrong. And it's not a matter of religion. It's not a matter of education. It's not a matter of where you grow up. It's not a matter of your ethnicity. If you are a human being, please raise your hand if you're a human being. I see 1, Okay, there's a couple of them that are a little iffy. You don't know if they're human or not. Do you realize that if you're a human being, you have a conscience? It's that voice inside of you, it's that really a mechanism inside of you that's telling you what's right and what's wrong. And God, so often, He speaks to us through our conscience. Even if you don't read the Bible, God is speaking to you through your own heart, that you know what is right and what is wrong. Now, the choices that you make in life will determine the health and the well-being of your conscience. If you make good and godly decisions in life, guess what? Your conscience can be good, it can be tender, it can be a clear conscience, it can be a receptive conscience. But if you're making selfish choices, if you're making evil choices, the Bible says you can have an evil conscience. You can have a hard conscience, a guilty conscience. You can even have a seared conscience. And 20 years of lying and covering up and avoiding the truth, you have to wonder, what was the condition of their conscience? Since we're talking about it, maybe I could just ask all of us, what's the condition of your conscience? Is it good? Is it clear? Can you hear God speaking to you? Or has it been a long time since you heard His voice? And here's what I have found out in my own life. The times that I disobey God, the times that I reject God, the more times I say no to God, the harder it is to hear His voice through my conscience the next time. Because my disobedience to God desensitizes my conscience. It's kind of like when you're disobeying your parents. For that first time, man, I sure hope Dad doesn't find out about this. But you know what? Then it becomes a little easier, doesn't it? Then it becomes a little easier even after that. During these 20 years of cover-up, God was also working not just in the brothers' lives. He was also working in Joseph's life, the kid that they thrown into the cistern, then sold into slavery. What had happened is he was taken into Egypt, and he became a slave, and then he was wrongly accused. He was thrown into prison, and then miraculously, literally, a rags to riches story. He is invited to appear before Pharaoh himself. He impressed Pharaoh so much that Pharaoh appointed him second in all of Egypt, second in command, became the prime minister of Egypt. A famine was coming, and Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of the distribution of food. And sure enough, the famine hit. People from all around were coming to Egypt to buy food. Not just in Egypt, but this famine spread. It was no respecter of boundaries, and it spread all the way into a land of Canaan. That's where Jacob and the brothers were living. And Jacob finally told his sons, go to Egypt to buy food so we won't starve to death out here. And so they make their way all the way over to Egypt, and guess who they have to stand before to be able to buy some food? The prime minister of Egypt, who happens to be their brother. What's crazy is 20 years, people change. I mean, I've seen some pictures of you guys from 20 years ago. I mean, for some of us, the years have not been kind. All right, let's just go ahead and admit it. So the brothers, they didn't recognize Jacob or Joseph because here he is. He's all dressed in the costumes and all the colors of Egypt. Doesn't look like a sheep herder at all. Doesn't have his fancy coat. That would have been an obvious dead giveaway. They never thought, hey, this could be our long-lost brother. Because in their mind, their brother's not a long-lost brother. He's a long-dead brother. He's the last person that we're going to see in Egypt. While they didn't recognize him, Joseph recognized them. He sees these 10 brothers. He starts quizzing them, trying to find out about them, find out what's going on, ask about their family back in Canaan. And as he thinks about these guys, he's trying to quiz them. He's trying to figure out, do they even want me a part of this family anymore? Have they changed at all? Are they still filled with that treachery, with that jealousy, that has led them to this point in their lives. Maybe his family forgot all about him. He hadn't forgot about them, though. So when they arrived, Joseph puts them to the test. He accused them of being spies. Hey, could I have that water there, please? Yeah, I'll get it. He accuses them of being spies, and here's what he did. He throws them into prison, and for 3 days he lets them cook down there in prison for a while, which is really something because 20 years ago, they're the ones who threw him in a pit, and now they're thrown into a pit. After 3 days of just languishing in prison, these 10 brothers, they started talking together. They said to one another, surely we're being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life. But when we would not listen, that is why this distress has come upon us. Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an account for his blood. It's crazy. This was 20 years ago that happened. But yet for them, it seemed like it was just yesterday. It was 20 years ago that they were dealing with this. But yet, after 3 days there together in prison, it's the one thing that they bring up. Shouldn't this been over with by now? No, it's not, because they're still stuck in that deep pit. And they haven't got out of it. For decades, the brothers, they lived with guilt. They lived with fear. And while that trap, it definitely hurt Joseph. That trap they set for Joseph, it haunted them for 20 years. I'm skipping over about 5 chapters right now of the story, but that's okay. The great news is that we serve a God who can take a mess and he can make it a message. God has grace to heal any family. Do you believe that? He has grace to fix any problem. God can take whatever is broken and he can bring healing. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. That's why we call it amazing grace. He has amazing grace for all of us. Well, Joseph kept one of the brothers in prison, sent the rest of them home, and said, don't you come back until you bring your youngest brother named Benjamin. If you ever think that coming back here buying more food, got to bring him, and then I'm going to know that you guys aren't spies. So they head on home, give food to the family. A year later, Jacob sends them back, even with the youngest boy, Benjamin. Benjamin, by the way, was Joseph's only full brother. All these other guys were half-brothers. And as you look at them coming back, Joseph, he throws a huge party for them. And he sits them down in birth order. Again, they don't even know that this guy is their brother. So they're thinking, man, I don't know what this guy is smoking, but suddenly he's got things figured out in such a way. He puts us in order from oldest to youngest, and now Benjamin is the youngest, and he gives him favored status among all the brothers. All these other guys are getting one piece of chicken, and they get down here to Benjamin at the end. He gets the whole bird. By the way, 20 years ago, it was his father who was showing favored status, and that's what started this whole problem in the first place, right? And so now it's a test to see how they're going to act. Joseph gives them the food they need, and he gets them sent on their way. But just before they leave, he takes this chalice off of his own table, and he hides it in the bag of Benjamin, the youngest son. And they're heading back home for a little ways, and Joseph sends one of his fastest riders out there, said, hey, you go catch those guys. I want you to find them because we want to make it seem like one of them stole from my table. And so they catch up with him, and they're saying, hey, if whoever has stolen from you, let that person die, because we never touched anything. Well, guess what? They find that chalice there in Benjamin's bag. Like, oh, no. Our own brother's going to die? And so what they end up doing is they all march back there, and Joseph is saying, hey, I'm not going to punish all of you. I'm just going to take this kid, and he is going to remain a slave here in Egypt. Which is, by the way, 20 years ago, that's exactly what happened to Joseph. And the brothers are like, no, this can't happen. You can't let this happen. Here, take me in his place. I will die in his place. I want my brother to live, and I'm willing to lay my life down. In fact, if anything happens to this boy, it's going to kill our father back home. Which 20 years ago, they weren't thinking of any of that, were they? They were only thinking of themselves. They didn't care what happened to their brother. They weren't thinking about what was going to happen to their dad. All they were thinking is, get this favored, snot-nosed, arrogant kid out of our lives. It was at that moment that Joseph realized they had changed. That in 20 years, the grace of God was reaching even into their hearts. And Joseph, he cleared the room, and he announced to everybody, I am Joseph. I'm your brother. I'm the one that you did yet 20 years ago. I was sold into slavery. Now, he said, don't be distressed. He said, don't be angry at yourselves. Instead, he says this, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And that's the God we serve. That redemption power of God goes deeper than the stain of sin has gone, deeper than the pit of jealousy goes. The grace of God is able to redeem out of whatever pit that we're in, whatever darkness that we're dealing with. He said lives are saved. The whole family ends up moving to Egypt because there's food there. Joseph provides for his family. It's an amazing part of God's whole redemptive story. Now, Joseph found it in his heart to forgive his brothers, but as I read through the rest of that story, and I encourage you to read through the rest of this incredible story, one of my favorite ones in the whole Bible, I don't know if the brothers ever came to the point where they could forgive themselves. I don't know if they ever got to the place that they were able to recognize that the things that we have done, yeah, they're heavy, but God's grace is greater still. I don't know if they ever got to that place. Because all of that digging of that pit and 20 years of covering up and hiding from it, it had relational consequences. You know, the pit of jealousy, it's a deep pit. It's a place that we don't want to be. But man, we can find ourselves there. And as we just have been just peeking down into that pit right now, we recognize that it's a dark place to be. That's where those brothers were. At least, before we leave this big dig in the Bible, can we at least ask ourselves a couple questions? Are you digging a pit with your words, your actions, your attitudes, sometimes to the most important people in your life? Jealousy and envy and hatred, it can grab hold of us. Or maybe there's a pit that you dug a long time ago. Maybe it's 20 years ago. But you've been covering it up. You've been hiding from it. Isn't it time to allow the grace of God to fill in that pit and lift you up out of there? There's a famous old farmer saying, if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is what? Stop digging. Truly, stop digging. You know, it's hurting other people, yes. But it's also hurting you. We're going to sing a final song this morning. It's called What a Friend We Have in Jesus. And the great line in that song is, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Maybe you've been carrying this hatred, this jealousy, this envy, and it's just getting heavy. You've been carrying it for a long time, but isn't today a great day that you can carry that to Jesus? And He's the one who has grace to help us in our time of need. So will you stand with me? I want to pray over you, and we'll sing this great song together.